Land Use Committee meeting. The time is 6:33. We're sort of dragging our feet for one member to arrive, but we're going to go ahead and call the roll.
Rodriguez, Esri,
Here.
Rogers,
Present.
Farney,
Here.
Locke,
Here.
Thorsland.
Here. And let the record show that Rodriguez has arrived.
Thank you.
All right, I'd now entertain a motion to approve the agenda with addendums. Moved by Farney, second by Esri. Any adjustments, changes, or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, that's done. We have the minutes of the August 7th, 2025 regular meeting before us. I'd first entertain a motion to approve by Locke and by Rogers. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All right. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. All right. We're going to begin public participation. A couple of things. Please turn off the ringer on your phone. That's appreciated for everyone that's up there. We have a lot of slips here tonight. I have not sorted or shuffled or anything. It's going to be in the order that I call them up. If you want to reiterate something someone else has said, we're going to try to get through everybody. We have an hour. You have 5 minutes apiece. Try not to be redundant in your testimony. I think if you hear it a couple times, you may not just say that you agree with the previous speaker or something. So we can keep things moving along so that we can get to the part where we actually work on the case. And hopefully, again, we get through everybody in the hour. That would be great. If we have to, we'll extend, but we try not to so that the board has time to work on the things. So in no particular order, I call Matt Correa. And in this room, green means you're on. You want to come up here to public participation and hit the button until it turns green, and the floor is yours, Matt.
Okay. I'm here tonight to talk about the solar project that's going out in our neighborhood in Spring Lake. I've lived out there for 52 years. It has been farm ground since when I was born. You're bringing a solar farm next to a neighborhood less than an acre from my property line. If I wanted to build at the back of my property line, you're still not within the distance. There's a lot of nature that goes on out there. I don't know if you guys know about the bald eagles that are going on out there. They do have nests. I would say west of me, about less than a quarter mile. Stewards of the land, we really need to think about what we're doing here. Our zoning board's wanting to pass the regulation of the 1.5 mile distance outside of town. Once they do this, that brings in whatever they want to do within a 1.5 mile radius of our town. You're coming to the west side. Don't know why. Have no idea why. They say there's no growth that way. Well, that's a small little neighborhood. It's been there I'm 53 years old, so I just really think this is not a great idea for this area, for our neighborhood. We don't want to see this, not to mention the Spring Lake. This is a spring-fed lake that comes off the aquifer. You're going to be setting this right over the top of the aquifer. We all have wells out there. We all know what happens when you start drilling in the ground, especially over the top of a aquifer. I just think it's something we need to consider. Not being a good idea in this neighborhood area, within short distance to my property line. That's about all I got. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Tyler Bozarth.
Everybody hear me all right? Perfect. All right. 5 minutes on the clock. So I'm talking about the solar project. I am very against the project. I live in the Spring Lake neighborhood. I'm going to call it adjacent to the project, next to it. One of the big things that stuck out to me during the review of the project was they're going to be removing trees, about an acre, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but any amount seems kind of opposite of protecting the environment just to put concrete into the ground. So again, against the project from that standpoint, and then not to mention houses being so close, families, neighborhood. Obviously, if I would have known that when I bought my house that a solar farm was going to be going up, would have never even considered buying my house out there. It would ruin the value of my home, not just in my opinion, but in the eyes of potential buyers as well. So definitely just something I wanted noted. Obviously, studies can be deceiving when it comes to property value, because property value is assessed by the county and not by the buyer of a home. It is not the seller value. So, yeah, I just ask that you make the right decision here and say no. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tyler. Alexis? Alexis Goodby, in case there's two Alexi. Alexis? Alexises.
All right. Hi, my name's Alexis. It's Godby last name, just so you know, but that's okay. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. I'm also going to talk about the proposed solar project. I just want to start off by saying the obvious. I'm just a regular person, like everybody else in this room. I do try to enjoy the little things in life, like a sunset, seeing a cardinal outside my window, watching deer frolic through the field next to my house. Just small little moments that I try to stop and really be grateful for just every day. I know that everyone is fighting their own battles. Everybody, like, you have no idea what the other person next to you is going through. At the end of the day, everybody's really just trying to do their best with what they have. We're all just experiencing and navigating life for the first time, together yet separately. Compassion and communication can go a really long way. You never know how much a friendly smile or a wave can mean to somebody else. I do deeply care about animals and the environment. I try to pick up litter that is not mine. I try to relocate spiders and other creepy crawlers instead of just smashing them and screaming. I reuse and recycle. I try to keep to myself and live somewhat quietly and responsibly. But when it comes to this project, I cannot stay silent about it. It's slightly easier to get the courage to speak up for yourself when you are fighting to protect your own safety, comfort, and peace of mind. I do understand the desire to transition to cleaner energy, but this specific project is not a rooftop array or a small locally driven effort to offset energy usage. It is a large-scale industrial development that will fundamentally and irreversibly change the character, safety, and integrity of the land, air, and lives around it. And for those of us who live nearby and who raise families here, who care deeply for the place, who have invested our lives here, the impacts are very real, very personal, and deeply concerning. The problems with this project and its location have been documented and discussed at previous meetings. They include declining home values, loss of rural character, environmental damage, fire and storm risk, EMF exposure, noise and activity, glare, questionable accountability of the developer, soil erosion and runoff, etc., all from this one project. It's been called a community solar farm, but it's not built by the community, it won't be run by the community, and it won't benefit most of the community. It is a private industrial facility owned and operated by an out-of-state company. It will leave behind lasting negative impacts on our homes, our health, and our land long after the developer is gone. I plead with you to stick up for me and for us, the neighbors who will see it, hear it, and live with its consequences every single day. Please take the voices of those who live closest into consideration when making your decision. I also did want to mention again a petition that has been started. To date, it has 370 signatures. A majority of those are Champaign County residents. I have submitted that to the zoning board, so I believe that should be in the packet. When I submitted it, there were about 356 signatures, but today there are 370, and I can submit the updated list if anybody wants those signatures. So that's not just me, that's not just those people in this room today, that's hundreds of people asking the decision makers like you to protect our homes and allow solar to be built responsibly away from neighborhoods like Spring Lake. So I ask you to please let this be the moment that you choose protection over profit. Please let this be the moment that you stand to protect your Champaign County residents and their homes, and not the moment that you traded our peace of mind, safety at home, and a rural beauty for a corporate energy project. Please ask yourselves honestly, if this project were proposed next to your home, your drinking well, or outside your child's bedroom window, would you still call it low impact? You do have legitimate reasons to stop the project, and I urge you to deny the requested waivers. I believe that approving the requested waivers could send a message to other corporations that Champaign County rules don't matter. Please show us that you care, show us that you hear us, and show us that you have our best interests at heart, and please say no to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Hansen.
Hi, I too am going to speak about the Mahomet Aquifer. Good evening, my name is Karen Hansen and I live in Mahomet. I first want to thank you all for allowing me the time to speak. I want to thank you for all your work on the board. I know this is not where any of us would like to be tonight. I would rather be picking up my son from football practice, driving him home as the sun sinks lower to kiss the horizon, admiring the corn and beans, wondering if the rain last night brought any relief to extremely dry crops. I should also be eating and laughing with my friends at the cookbook club, which Mahomet Library hosts. We who are here all had something else to do. We all had somewhere else to be. But we knew that this was too important a fight to just stand on the sidelines. When my family and I moved to Mahomet 3 years ago, we were very excited to find a small village surrounded by fields of corn and beans. It was a much needed change from the high desert city of Colorado Springs, Colorado. My family and I soon learned the ways of the land of water. I was shocked to hear that the Mahomet Aquifer was a water table of 30 feet. In the desert, you go down hundreds of feet, praying to hit just a little bit of water. You as a committee are tasked as your #1 job to protect the Mahomet Aquifer. As your committee name suggests, your #1 priority should always be the environment. As for this project, we simply do not know the environmental impact on this piece of land. We simply do not have data on what the effect of a high water table is on solar panels. We do not know what construction and decommissioning does or storm damage will do. How will this affect Spring Lake? How will the Sangamon River be that the Spring Lake flows into? Have the Army Corps of Engineers been consulted? Was the EPA given a chance to look? Because that's under federal control. You may hear, but this lab or this out west, they have this. I am here as a person of the desert to tell you the water is cleaned by hundreds and thousands of soil, dirt, and rock. These two things are not the same. You all have the power to slow this down and really look at the environmental impact on this specific place. I know there's concern about the law and about getting sued, and you have to say yes, but what happens if this project causes damage to the Sangamon River? I'm sure the EPA and the feds won't take kindly to Champaign County. What happens if they damage the aquifer? Does that open the county or anyone in this room open to dereliction of duty? To quote Abraham Lincoln, it often requires more courage to dare to do right than to fear to do wrong. I chose this quote because I believe that it shows that Abraham Lincoln believed we all have a choice. We have autonomy to stand up and say, slow down, is this right? This quote suggests that integrity in the face of serious consequences is the highest form of courage. I'm asking you all today to have the courage to say stop, slow down, and let's do our jobs to make sure that we are acting on behalf of the land. And to quote another famous man, Theodore Geisel, aka Dr. Seuss, I am the Lorax and I speak for the trees. Distinguished committee members, you know your job is to speak for the trees, and especially the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Moira Cronin?
All right. So thank you to the Champaign Environmental and Land Use Committee, the county staff, and the community for allowing me to speak on behalf of Mahomet, Illinois Solar One. I'm the developer representing my company today for the 4.99 megawatt AC community solar project off of Spring Lake Road. So just for more background, we are a long-term owner and operator. We are not going to go away, like some of the other people have spoken before me have said. We're also not removing an acre of trees. I just wanted to clarify that. The permit application is also submitted in accordance with the Illinois statute regulations for the siting of commercial solar facilities and enforcing the Illinois statute 102.1123 that Karen Hansen just alluded to about community solar projects. We are trying to contribute to the Illinois goal of the state of Illinois' goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. And the finding of facts drafted by the ZBA found that the project did not impact the health and safety or change the nature of the neighborhood. We have submitted all of our environmental reports, so that's been reviewed by IDNR, EcoCat, U.S. Fish and Wildlife through their IPAC. So there are a few species that are flagged kind of within the area, but none of them were actually seen on our site. And that was confirmed as well by the different environmental groups as well. We're actually would be increasing so I guess one of the species is the orchid, and that would actually thrives in meadows. And so with our seed mix that was submitted on 5/29, that's actually would help promote the wildlife for the orchid to be able to live there. Our U.S. Fish and Wildlife report found that there's no critical habitat were identified within the subject property. The Illinois State Historic Preservation Office found that there was no historic properties or archaeological facts found within the proposed subject area. We've done a geotechnical report. We've done drainage tile surveys, so we are aware of where drainage tiles are located. The drainage tiles will be relocated if necessary to avoid driven piles from the array, and no construction will take place in the temporary staging area that's marked in the shaded area on our site plan. It'll just be a temporary laydown area for construction equipment before it's actually built. Our project will include non-hazardous solar panels, does not include cadmium.
Moira?
Out of time?
Yeah.
That's
but
okay.
I'm
Thank
going to
you.
ask you because I'm sure the board's going to have questions for you if you stay
Yes, yeah, I'll
for the
be
rest of the
here.
hearing. Okay.
So, thanks. Sorry, I ran out of time.
I now call Diana Hanson. Could you push the button on the mic there and just make it turn green? That's it. Thank you.
Got it. My name is Diana Hanson. I'm simply here as a friend. I live in Mahomet, and my friend lives in Spring Lake, so I go out and visit quite often. When I go down the road, she lives on a cul-de-sac, and right straight ahead is where the solar panel and the solar farm is going to go. So I can't imagine going down once it's built and not sitting on her front porch looking at the birds and seeing the deer in the backyard when I go there. So I oppose it, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Linda Lamilton? All right, I got it right.
Did. First of all, I want to thank all of you for allowing us to have our say in this matter. I am talking about the Mahomet Solar Farm proposal as well. I'm writing this in strong opposition to the proposal of the Mahomet Solar One project. As a resident of this community for 28 years, we have been fortunate to call this rural community our home, a place defined as by its tranquility, its natural beauty, and its agricultural heritage. The proposal threatens to destroy the very characteristics that make this community special. Our opposition is not against renewable energy itself, but rather against the placement of an industrial solar farm on prime agricultural land and next to a residential area. We are concerned with the loss of prime farmland. This project would sacrifice valuable productive agricultural land, an invaluable resource that serves as both a source of national food security and foundation of our local economy. This prime farmland should not be converted for temporary energy production. This land is not disposable commodity. Sacrificing this productive soil for a temporary energy project is an unsustainable decision. The USDA has recently ceased funding such projects. We're concerned with the environmental degradation and water issues. Excuse me. The construction of this solar farm would cause significant land degradation. The use of heavy equipment will compact the soil, increasing water runoff and worsening the existing drainage issues we have at Spring Lake and Briarfield Acres. This will only add to current problems with water runoff and tile damage. Furthermore, once this land is used for solar panels, it will no longer be viable for farming. We are concerned with the aesthetics and decline of property values. This project is a visual blight. We do not want to look out our doors and see an industrial farm instead of the natural landscape we moved here for. Studies consistently show that solar farms in rural areas decrease the property value of adjacent homes, a financial burden that should not be placed on the community. No fence nor rows of small trees will take the place of the rural characteristics we enjoy. We're concerned with the ecosystem and habitat destruction. The proposal to remove an acre of timber, and we've gone through 3 meetings, and they said that they're going to take out an acre on the east side, so I'm not exactly sure what changed on that. But it will destroy the diverse range of wildlife. We have migratory swans and pelicans and cranes. We have the resident bald eagles. Our small wetland area is a sanctuary for pheasants, turkeys, deer, foxes, just to name a few. The solar panels radiate significant heat, which can alter soil moisture and harm the vegetation that supports the ecosystem. We are particularly concerned about the impact on pollinators. Will the proposed pollinator-friendly vegetation simply be burned up by the heat of these panels? We are, is that it? Okay. We are concerned with water contamination. We all have private wells, which tap into the Mahomet Aquifer. While Summit Ridge claims no water will be used on site, solar panels require cleaning. The reality is that we have dust storms, and they are quite common now, and panels need to be cleaned to remain efficient. This cleaning process, combined with the risk of leaching hazardous chemicals from the panels themselves, poses a serious threat to our drinking water and the health of Spring Lake and Briarfield Acres. After you have heard from all of us tonight, please consider whether you would want this project built directly next to your house. The long-term health, environmental, and financial risk of this project are too significant and too unknown to justify its approval. We ask that you vote against this project and protect our community and our shared responsibilities as stewards of this great land. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Okay, and thank you, and we're gonna see if we can make the clock work better. Dave Sproul.
I also would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. My wife and I reside at 408 South Briarfield Court in Mahomet, which is part of the Briarfield acre subdivision, which is directly next to this proposed project. I would literally be able to stand in my driveway and throw a rock and hit one of these panels. That's how close we are, and I've got neighbors that are even closer than that. We're here to voice our opposition to this Mahomet Solar One project. A solar farm at this location makes absolutely no sense. The petitioners are asking for waivers from county ordinances so they can build this installation closer to the village of Mahomet boundary, excuse me, and closer to residential properties than current county ordinances permit. In addition, they are asking for a waiver that protect them from having to pay for any damage to County Road 125 East, Spring Lake Road, that the construction may cause, leaving that expense burden on the Mahomet Township taxpayers. They are asking for that waiver because they know very well that the road will be damaged by trucks and construction equipment. They just don't want to have to pay for the repair. Additionally, the proposed location is prime farmland. This has already been discussed. My question is that I'd like you to consider, why are we so bent on destroying agriculture, ecosystems, natural habitat and beauty, existing mature forest, and risking the Mahomet Aquifer in exchange for so-called green energy? We keep hearing that we need this green energy to save the planet, but now we're willing to destroy parts of the planet for that same reason? To me, that's insane. At the May 29th Zoning Appeals meeting, we heard testimony and answers to questions assuring that this would have no negative impacts on the environment, would not cause any increase in ambient noise, will not cause any damage to the ground and surrounding residents in the event of storm damage to the solar field. This can be disproven by doing a quick internet search and reading stories of other areas that have been damaged. The recent storm damage to the solar farm in Maroa, Illinois, is a proof of that. The name of this proposed project is Mahomet Solar 1. The name alone shows intent for future Mahomet Solar expansion if this project is approved to move forward. The obvious expansion area would include 2 adjacent fields also owned by Greater Heritage Farms, LLC, thereby wrapping the extended farm all the way over to County Road 125 East, Spring Lake Road. As others have said, I'm not against solar energy, but I am against placing it in this location. It is way too close to residential areas. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Debbie Bunch. Debbie? Oh, there you are.
My name is Debbie Bunch, and my husband Dan and I live at 405 South Briarfield Court. This is the cul-de-sac that will have the best view and be the closest to the proposed solar farm. Thank you for the time to speak at this meeting. I am grateful that we have had 3 ZBA meetings to ask the developer questions, because we asked the same question multiple times and over the course of 2 meetings just to get what might be an accurate answer. I want to believe that a developer would come to us with accurate, detailed, and site-specific information from the very beginning, not with a generic one-size-fits-all solar farm proposal that does not reflect the reality of our area or our concerns. Topics brought up by the public more than once in ZBA meetings include the number of panels proposed for the site. In February, we were given information that cited 2 different numbers on the same page: 10,920 panels and 12,696 panels. In August, we were told there would be 12,576 panels on the 36-acre proposed site. That is the equivalent of 12,000 plus people coming to watch a solar eclipse in that field and never leaving. Weed and grass maintenance for the site. Weed grass control goals were cited as the following: mowing will occur as needed to maintain a neat appearance and comply with local ordinances. Maintain vegetation at a manageable height, 6 to 12 inches, to reduce the fire risk. At the May meeting, the public was referred to the Deluge Solar Farm on Market Street as approved by the City of Champaign. This solar farm is comparable in size to the proposed Mahomet Solar Farm and developed by Summit Ridge Energy. On August 12th, the grass and weeds were 3 feet tall. I asked the City of Champaign Planning and Development Department who was supposed to mow it, and I was told Summit Ridge Energy was supposed to mow it. I did go back to the solar farm on Market Street on August 20th, and the grass and weeds had been mowed, or in this case, bush hogged. If the solar farm on Market Street is not being regularly mowed and maintained, I doubt one in the country will get much attention either. the noise testing equipment certification and calibration. In the February packet, the calibration certificate for the equipment used in noise level testing indicated recalibration due on May 19th, 2024. But the testing at the site of the proposed development was done between October 29th and October 31st of 2024. After this was pointed out at the February and May meetings, documentation was provided stating that the equipment was sound and a new certificate was provided in the August packet. Ideally, the developer would have caught the expired certificate before it was included in the initial packet. The fact that they did not is worrisome. Solar credit subscription. In the How Community Solar Works section of the May informational packet, we are told we can subscribe to use electricity from the community solar farm. It says your subscription helps the developer fund the garden. In return, you get a credit on your electric bill. The question was brought up at the May and August meetings about how this works exactly. Both times the answer was simply apply with Ameren, Illinois. On Ameren, Illinois' site, it says subscribers contract with the generator owners for a subscription entitling them to the output of a certain portion of a generator. The terms and conditions associated with the sale and transfer of subscriptions are between the generator owner and the customer subscriber. Subscribers must authorize the generator owner to enroll them in Ameren, Illinois net metering services. Ameren, Illinois may ask customer subscribers for their authorization to release information about their usage and billing to the generator owner. When I called Ameren, Illinois, they confirmed their responsibility is for the billing only. At the May and August meetings, the developer assured us that Ameren, Illinois manages everything because that is the way it's done in Virginia, where Summit Ridge Energy is based. Here in Illinois, that does not seem to be the case. Post-decommissioned land use. All the revisions of the decommissioning plan say that the land will be restored to the meadow condition that existed prior to the construction of the solar farm. Right now, the land is considered best prime farmland. Prime farmland is defined by the best combination of physical and chemical characteristics for crop production. It is land that can be easily farmed, yields high production with minimal inputs, and causes the least damage to the environment. A meadow is a piece of grassland, especially one used for hay. If anyone has been to the site recently, the corn is about 10 to 12 feet tall and not currently growing in a meadow. Returning the land to a meadow condition post-decommission is different from returning it to best prime farmland.
Debbie?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you're ready to
I'm
wrap
almost
up.
done. I have 2 more paragraphs.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be fair to others if I
Okay.
let you do too. Tried my best. Cheryl Sproul?
If I have any, oops, it's green. If I have any extra time, can she finish her 2 paragraphs? Doesn't work that
It's
way.
not Congress. Yeah, we don't yield
Okay.
time to others here. So
I was going to yield my time.
you don't
What
want
can
us
I
to run like that, do you?
No, I don't. I don't. My name is Cheryl Sproul, and that was my husband Dave before. We live at 408 South Briarfield Court, and that subject property is, like he said, straight at the end of our cul-de-sac, which isn't very appealing. My family came to Illinois from Western Pennsylvania in 1989. We were in awe of how much farm ground there was here. And I say was because over the last 36 years that we've been here, farm ground has been sacrificed for many different reasons. Illinois has no farmland to spare to out-of-state companies who come to take away our natural resources, which has been happening here and in surrounding communities. We are losing family farmland one right after the other. They call it a community solar farm. Baloney. It's not benefiting our community. There are so many reasons for you to vote no on this request and ultimately on this project. I'm sure my neighbors have already expounded on many reasons, and if there are any after me, they will continue to do so. You were elected by county residents to protect our communities. You were entrusted with protecting our land. You or someone before you made decisions based on research and discussions to put these ordinances in place, and there were reasons behind it. I know these ordinances were not written without hours of discussion and much research from staff. I worked in local government for over 30 years. I understand how this works. And I understand the long hours that it takes to write these policies and rules and ordinances, and they're not taken lightly. You spent a lot of time doing this, and there's a reason behind why these things that they're asking waivers for were written to start with. Please consider the impact that this will have on the environment, the neighborhood, the township, the county, our state, and ultimately our country, if we do not stop sacrificing our natural resources by allowing prime farmland to be out of production for 35 to 40 years with no guarantee that it will ever produce crops again. Thank you for your service, for your time, for your consideration, and I ask that you vote no on these requests and uphold the ordinances as they've been written. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Murphy.
Still on. My name's Mike Murphy. I'm the president of the Spring Lake Homeowners Association, and I'm here to address the solar farm. And I want to state clearly that an overwhelming majority of our HOA membership is opposed to the proposed solar farm. And excuse me, this is detailed in the letter that was emailed to your board and the accompanying data. And I'm sure you all have that and have reviewed it. And hopefully, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, that's all I got.
All right. Thank you for your brevity.
All right. Thank you for your service.
Diana Harmon.
I'm Diana Harmon. I live at 1705 West North Shore Drive in the Spring Lake subdivision. I'm a lifelong resident of Mahomet. In fact, my family owns farmland on the west side of Spring Lake Road and have for probably close to 100 years. I would just like to reiterate, I agree with just about everything that has been said here tonight. I'm not against solar energy. Some of our neighbors have solar panels on their homes. I just don't think that the location of this site is appropriate. And I think that's kind of backed up by the fact that there would need to be 4 variances approved and an amendment to another ordinance to allow for the battery storage. And I just ask that you would consider all of these requests and vote no. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Those are all the slips I have on hand here. Is there anyone else who wants to add anything to tonight's conversation? You've been a wonderful set of public participants and you've kept time moving right along. So we fit 12 people in, which would fit in an hour, in less than an hour. So we have more time. Just raise your hand, let me know, and you can come up and speak and we'll get your name afterwards. If not, I'm going to close public participation in. Oh, which email did we want to read? Is it this one? Okay, where is that one? Oh, it was on the VES. Thanks. Okay, I have one thing to add to public then. This is from Mr. Philip Carper. This is not about the Spring Lake case. Good afternoon. I would like to ask if the Environmental Land Use Committee would readdress the rooster regulation, type of fowl, and quantity for all residential neighborhoods in Champaign County. Most recently, we have 7 coops within a block and a half of our home in Seymour. The 3 closest coops have roosters and the other fowl that make shrill whistling noises. Some have over a dozen or more fowls. There is no set time for the crowing and whistling. This has occurred at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and all other hours of the day and night. Regards, Philip Carper, sent from my iPhone. So, and you have a copy of this, I assume, already for the minutes. Thank you. Thank you, John, for reminding me of that. So, one more time, going once, going twice. You know what? If the board's okay with that, come on up.
As much as I hate public speaking, as you could tell, probably. Just to sort of wrap up what I was saying, the village of Mahomet does not want to develop to the west of town, and we consider that a blessing. Unfortunately, we did not anticipate a solar company approaching a landowner about turning a field into an experiment. There were so many unknowns about impact to the environment, Spring Lake, Mahomet Aquifer, et cetera, but we should not have to endure those unknowns. I want to go on record that my husband Dan and I oppose this solar project. The information packets describe a solar farm, a new quiet neighbor, but we do not want this new neighbor in our neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for sticking through. So, all right, one more time. Going once, going twice. All right, thank you again, everybody, for being concise and polite. It's always appreciated, and not a single phone rang. So, which, as a diehard boomer, I really, really appreciate. All right, moving on, I'm going to close public comment. Do we have any communications for the board? Aaron?
Yes, thanks. Harvest is essentially right around the corner. While I don't know of anyone in my area of the county who's actually out in the fields yet, if you've been on the South Farms, of course, the U of I's started, and I don't know if they're done, but they've started chopping corn for silage for the cows. But harvest is right here. A lot of the crops, especially the corn, are looking like they're close. And another indicator is that Premier Co-op, one of the bigger elevator companies, you could say, in the county, they're having their half price drying next week. So for the first part of the week, at least, at some of their locations. So it's here. So if you're out and about in the county, in the country, start potentially looking out for the equipment moving on the roads, and be a little more aware and slow down when and if you see it. Would ask, and just hope that everyone can get along and have a safe harvest without any accidents. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to exercise chair's prerogative, and I have a few things for communications that are sort of related to public input. We're not allowed to engage public input, but there's some things that I want to put on the record because we get all your emails. We really appreciate it. We read all of those. They're sent to us. You send them directly. We get them from Mary. A lot of things are said in the emails. I appreciate that there was a really good effort to make your opinions known. And most of them were very well done. But just some facts. First of all, I used to live in Newcomb Township, just north of Mahomet. Very involved in things that happened in Mahomet. And the biggest loss of farm ground in that area, prime farm ground, has been the development of Mahomet, more than any amount of solar farms we could ever imagine to put around it. So some facts about the farmland in Illinois. There's 70,000 plus farms, and this is all from FarmDoc. There's 27 million acres of agriculture land in Illinois as of 2024. It's 75% of the state. Our biggest products are soy, corn, and swine, apparently, which was a surprise to me. So we're not talking about a swine farm tonight, which is very good. The average size is 375 acres. It's almost all grain and only 3% is pigs. So I want to know what's the fourth thing on the list after 3% of swine. Up until recently, about 44% was exported. About 6% is here in the U.S. as far as Illinois production. That's changed a lot with recent things in the tariffs. 84% of the farms are owned by individuals or families. 6% are partnerships, 6% are corporations, and 3% are other. Let's see, what have we got? We've got 121,342 farmers as of 2024. And just as a note that I found surprising, only 155 of those are people of color. Solar in the state of Illinois, as of this year, is 27,600 acres. So how does that work out in math? That is 0.01% of all the farm ground in Illinois. A solar footprint for an average farm in Illinois is about 48.34 per megawatt, which means per acre, a solar farm realizes about $8,700 in income for whoever's selling the electricity. and I'm positive it generates income for the landowner. Solar is one of only the few forms of development that can be easily repurposed after it's removed, and agriculture is the easiest thing to do afterwards. In the old days, before we became big, fields were allowed to lay fallow for several years as part of the crop rotation. And again, I'm sure you are familiar, solar farms are put in with metal pilings that get pushed into the ground. There's no concrete. They can be pulled back up, and that soil can be tilled over. There was a lot of statements about EMF, about chemicals, about property value, about wildlife impact, farming impact. Most of those have little or no actual basis in practice. Again, the EMF from a solar farm is less than if you have a toaster or a washing machine in your house. So unless you came up here in a buggy, I think you probably have more EMF in your living room than you'll get from this solar farm. And you'd have to go to the middle of the solar farm where the inverters are to even get close to that. Some other facts about solar. They do not leach chemicals. The thin film solar panels stopped being used probably 20 years ago, and they had very little leach. The only way to get the chemicals out of a solar panel is to grind them up like coffee grounds. There was the storm damage in Maroa. The biggest risk for solar farms from storms is to the developer because they have to replace it, put it back. The inverters do make noise, but they only make noise during the day. I did have people tell me that they were worried about sleeping at night. They do not cause headaches. They do not stop migratory birds from moving through. They don't stop the passage of livestock, of deer. If anyone has watched, you'll see the deer have no problem walking through anything. The ZBA here, we'll talk about this later, but all the findings from the ZBA were in the affirmative. They had a vote. They were missing some members. It was 3 with 1 against and 1 abstention. Generally, the committee, or the petitioner rather, is told that we don't have a full board tonight. You need 4 affirmative. Do you want to postpone the vote to another date? I didn't make it in the video to that part of that, so I don't know if it happened on that night, but I understand it happened on other nights. So, and the most important thing to remember about tonight is our vote's not the final vote for this solar farm. It goes to the full county board, whether we say yes or we say no. And so I hope that you folks at the full county board meeting, which will be in a couple of weeks, have time to come out again to see how the full board feels about it. That's usually the best forum to get the opinion of the whole county. This is, by nature, a limited committee, and we don't have all the areas represented on the committee. So, and that's all I have for now. I'm going to have some questions for the petitioner because there are some things I have questions about that were brought up in public comment for them. But I'm going to stop now and we're going to move on. We have a couple things to do before we get back to this topic. They won't take long. Any other communications besides my windy one? New business items to be approved by ELOC. A, recreation and entertainment license for Araceli Gutierrez for a Spanish rodeo at the Champaign County Fairgrounds, 1302 North Kohler Avenue, Urbana, Illinois, to be held September 7, 2025. And with the board's permission, I would omnibus into this. B, recreation and entertainment license for Araceli Gutierrez for a Spanish rodeo at the Champaign County Fairgrounds, 1302 North Kohler Avenue, Urbana, to be held on October 5th. I'd entertain a motion.
With the stipulation that it's Gutierrez.
Thank you, Emily. Was that a motion?
Yes.
All right, we've got a motion and a second from Locke. Is there any discussion? Thank you for the correction again. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, the rodeo goes on. So, and they're very good, actually. I've been to one. Now, moving on to item 8, new business items to be recommended to the county board. Zoning case 162S25, a request by Mahomet Illinois Solar One LLC, care of Summit Ridge Energy LLC, by agent Maria Crone, Senior Manager, Project Development, and participating landowners, Paul Nurmi Trustee, and Greater Heritage Farms LLC, to authorize a community PV solar farm with a total nameplate capacity of 4.99 megawatt and totaling approximately 36 acres in the Ag 2 zoning district on the south side of US Highway 150, in the west half of the northeast quarter, and the east half of the northwest quarter of Section 17, Township 20 North, Range 7 east of the 3rd Principal Meridian, in Mahomet Township, commonly known as farmland owned by Greater Heritage Farms LLC and Paul Nurmi Trustee, with the following waivers of standard conditions. Part A, a waiver for not entering into a road grade upgrade maintenance agreement or waiver therefrom with the relevant local highway authority prior to consideration of the special use permit by the zoning board of appeals per section 615G1. Part B, a waiver for locating the PV solar farm less than 1.5 miles from an incorporated municipality per section 615B2A. Part C, a waiver for locating the PV solar farm 65 feet from a non-participating lot that is 10 acres or less in area in lieu of the minimum required separation of 240 feet between the solar farm fencing and the property line per section 615D3A. And Part D, a waiver for providing financial assurance for the decommissioning and site reclamation plan in the form of a surety bond in lieu of a letter of credit per section 615Q. I'd first entertain a motion. Motion by Locke and a second by Rodriguez. For discussion, first we'll start off, I think, with John, if you want to add anything to what I've described.
Well, first I want to make clear that the ZBA made affirmative findings for the waivers Part A, Part B, and Part C. They recommended denial of waiver Part D based on the testimony in the case. So that was the findings by the ZBA. They don't recommend approval of Part D. There was, like we said, like Mr. Thorsland said, an abstention, and we don't see those often at the ZBA. And for that reason, that and the one vote against, 2 members absent, it failed, even though all the findings were affirmative. Regarding the waiver Part A, there's a special condition that will require a roadway upgrade and maintenance agreement prior to the approval of a zoning use permit. Every solar farm the county board has seen has included something like this. They don't like to get the road agreement in place before they get to the county board. That road agreement always gets reviewed by ELUC, and it has to be signed by the relevant highway jurisdiction before they get a permit. So that's not a waiver from it. The waiver for Part C, I actually blame that on staff error. When we wrote this, we had no idea that there would be a railroad lot. We normally think of railroads as being in a right-of-way, not being a lot, but the railroad that runs through Mahomet, or at least on the north side of this property, is actually on a lot less than 10 acres in area, and so it needs that waiver. If I had it to do over, we'd have written the ordinance that way. And again, the Part D waiver is not recommended by the ZBA. I sent out the notes that describe that the new state law regarding county board review of solar farms and wind farms says that if a solar farm meets the standards in the statutes, it must be approved. This solar farm exceeded the standards in the statute. It met your own standards. And so, you know, do with the state law what you will, but that is the state law. Also, state law requires final decision within 30 days of the close of the public hearing. We were not able to do that. I told folks in the beginning we would not be able to do that just because of the way our meetings fall. So that's all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Questions for John? Emily?
My question's about Part D. Haven't we allowed for this wonky stipulation before with requiring?
We have never allowed it. You had a request recently from a data center solar array developer to accept surety bonds, but we have never been able to amend the ordinance, mainly due to time. And in fact, in this case, I found out, you remember the developer that was asking for that change was having trouble finding a bank with the right credit rating. Turns out that in Illinois, if a local government is going to accept a surety bond, it also has to have a credit rating. Maybe they're easier to come by than bank credit ratings, I don't know. But we did find out new information from the state's attorney in this case, but we've never accepted a surety bond to date.
Okay, and do you know if the ZBA had that information whenever they
Yes,
did not?
they did have.
Okay, thanks. And another question that I had, we often see community outreach plans with these kind of approvals. Was that, I don't see that included here. Is there a reason or?
I don't quite know what you mean by community outreach plans. That would be a question for the developer who is here tonight. I actually don't recall if they had community meetings or not.
Yes, that's what I mean by community outreach, like public meetings, attempts to inform the public. We've just seen that delineated in previous proposals, so I can return and repose that.
I know that in the case of the non-community solar farms that you've seen, there was outreach in those. Those were, hundreds of acres of solar farms. I'm not aware that any community solar farm has ever done that, but that doesn't mean they can't. It just means that they have not so far.
Other questions for John? I have a few if no one else does. Just to reiterate, I'm looking at the map for the screening, and the screening we specify is on any side within 1,000 feet, but I see that we have screening on the west and the south, and also fencing. There is a question I have for the developer, and I'm going to ask the developer to come up in a little bit, but the map that I have shows proposed tree line about 1 acre of total tree clearing, and then it shows the current tree line as typical. And this fence sort of runs what it looks like right on the edge of the tree line. And I'm going to ask the developer about that because the developer said one thing in public testimony or in public input tonight that's different than what I see on the map. So I'm going to clarify that for everybody in a moment. The aquifer depth near Spring Lake, I heard, was 30 feet. I don't think that's correct. And I only tell you that because last night I sat in this room because I'm on the Carbon Capture Sequestration Task Force, and we talked at great length about the aquifer and where it is. It may be, water is available at 30 feet, but it's not the aquifer. And then John has explained the railroad waiver. That railroad right-of-way is indeed a lot for whatever quirkiness of railroad law is, and it is less than 10 acres because even though it goes from here to Saskatoon or whatever, it's broken up into little pieces. All the other setbacks, John, correct me, all the other ones meet or exceed, right, from any residence. We heard from the petitioner that all of the environmental impact stuff was done. And we heard that from a member of the public that they did do an updated sound certificate test after being informed that their other one was not. I don't know if the USDA, this was another question, not really for you, is indicative of whether solar farms are good or not right now. And again, I don't think if this solar farm were to fail or they weren't, were damaged by storm enough to decide that they were going to go away, that land can be returned to farming actually fairly easier. And at this point, if you don't have more questions for John, I have questions for the petitioner. Would the board like me to bring the petitioner back up? All right, Moria, if you don't mind coming up and Who wants to go first? Emily?
I'm asking way more questions than usual tonight. My first question is, I guess, a follow-up. Was a community outreach effort something that you considered? So again, like town halls, efforts to inform the public on what would be included in the plan, et cetera.
Yes, we have done them from other projects. They typically just become more negative. We are very familiar with the mobilized community, that a lot of people that are here in coordinated shirts that are against the project. So we chose to not do it because it just is found to be, it just gives people more, I guess, like time to mobilize against the project. We haven't found them to be incredibly productive. So we did not do one for this project.
Okay, thank you. And a follow-up question, can you tell me more about the pollinator plans?
Yes, so our pollinator seed mix was submitted in May specifically, on May 29th, I think. We sent that to Charlie or John. And so that's what we typically do for all of our projects. So we have over 100 operating projects in Illinois, and this is our seed mix that we've done for most of our sites. And it's a pollinator-friendly seed mix based on the species that IDNR recommends. So you're welcome to take a peek at that, but that has been submitted. And then we also have our trees that we proposed as well, where existing trees are not already providing shading, or not shading, but I guess protection from people's viewpoint. And then I don't know if you've driven by this part of Highway 150, but it's heavily vegetated there as well, which is why we didn't propose doing it there. So there would be trees wrapped around. Understandably, they would not be taller than the fence height. Our fence height is 7 feet to start, but over the course they're staggered, like and so they would grow to be 10 to 12 feet tall.
I guess I'm giving you an opportunity to talk to the people in the area about the benefits to pollinators in the area.
It just, I mean, I've talked about it like so much at other meetings, but it just, the pollinator friendly is able to bring in biodiversity that's not there existing. There's a lot of plants and flowers that are able to grow. The meadow that would be produced with the seed mix actually does invite more animals and biodiversity. And that it would, like I was talking about, the orchids is one example of a plant species that is endangered that we expect to increase. I guess just increase the population of orchids. So we don't view this as taking away vegetation, and it also, the meadow also does increase drainage as well. So right now it's just cropland, and then it kind of like bounces off the soil or bounces off the crop when it's there and goes into the ground. But with the meadow, it's able to, I guess it's just able to absorb the water in a different way than crops, and that it's able to help mitigate the water. So it doesn't just run off the site like it does when there's no crops.
Just one final note, this is more for our committee. I'm not sure, I understand it's not a requirement to have a community outreach plan. I sure like it when there is one. And I'm just one board member, but I guess I just wanted to note that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's pros and cons to it. I mean, the petitioner has their perspective of it, and the community has their perspective of it. And I think the community, one of the reasons the ZBA meetings take a while is because we let everyone speak as long as they would like to. I know that because I was the chairman of the ZBA for a very long time. And that's a really good forum to let people of all sides of the issue get a really good audience to talk. The communities obviously talk among themselves. On the other hand, they can also, as the petitioner said, be sort of a Festivus festival, a sharing of grievances. Yeah, it's a great holiday. So I can see both sides, but if you're interested, going forward, if you want to propose when we have other things that the ZBA asks these questions, or that we make it some sort of part, I don't know that we can put it in the ordinance per se in some worded way that would actually function, but I would suggest highly, and I've said this through 10 years of ZBA meetings, the best form of resolving a lot of ZBA issues has been to get all the parties to talk to themselves a lot of things have been solved, not in this building, but back at Brookins out in the parking lot that, you know, were resolved much better than we did in all the meeting time that we did inside the building. So, and I encourage that kind of communication to continue. I have a question about the trees. You said that none would be removed. I see it on the map.
Yes, I misspoke. I guess I was talking that I misspoke just flat out, but there's no trees being removed specifically for the panels to be placed. The trees are being removed so that we don't cast a shadow over the panels. Basically, the angle on the east side here, that it would create a shadow, so we would lose a big section of our array. So I apologize for misspeaking. When reviewing this before the meeting, I did not look on the right-hand side and make sure that, so I do apologize.
Okay, and there's no flexibility there? We couldn't convince you to leave a row out or let them be partially shaded in the morning?
We have an interconnection agreement that's very specific about the size of our projects that we've committed to Ameren more than a year ago for the interconnection agreement. So it would be really hard for us to go back and change the size of our project, unfortunately.
Okay, and that wooded area to the side there, you're saying it's approximately about an acre of trees, and I don't know if you know the number of all the trees that are there, but it appears to be a lot more than an acre. And it would only be right on the edge. It wouldn't extend any further than south of the fence line, right?
Correct, exactly. And it's
All that would
1
remain.
acre of, it's actually, let me see if it's outside of the, okay, so it's in our lease line. So it's 1 acre of there's 36.15 acres.
So 1/36 of the
Yeah, so
total
it
area.
is, I know it seems like a big number, but we do try to find sites where we don't have to clear cut all of the trees. And we also are planting a significant number of trees as well. I forget what the number is off the top of my head, but it's on my slide deck.
Okay, are you indicating that maybe that becomes just a 1-for-1 swap? It's just basically putting trees in another place?
Yeah, exactly. So we, so they'd be planted at 5 feet and they would grow to 12 to 15 feet tall. We are proposing Thuja occidental, which is a Techni arborvitae. It's what we've done on most of our projects in Illinois because they've taken really well, and they're more deer resistant as well.
Okay. But what about the deer? They like to eat too.
I'm all for that too. It's all part of.
Emily touched on this Part D, and we've touched on it in other solar farm and I guess maybe wind farm too. No, not in wind farm yet. I am inclined pretty strongly to go with the ZBA finding on that. I think that we have it's in the ordinance what you have to do, and there's mechanisms to get it, and there are banks that have it. And since they're not that much different, I would suggest that this board recommend that we don't allow Part D waiver if we approve or disapprove that is something that we shouldn't approve.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
Okay, so just for more clarity, so the decom is just for the decommissioning, the financial assurance is for the decommissioning bonds that we would place up front. It's required through AMA, the agricultural impact mitigation agreement, and it specifically does say that you can use a surety bond or a letter of credit. A letter of credit is actually not as strong of a financial assurance. This is in our application, but I'm just going to read it for the board. The applicant requests to use a surety bond for decommissioning in lieu of a letter of credit. The county ordinance references a surety bond, the county ordinance references, the surety bond as an acceptable form of security for residential or planned unit facilities and improvements. And then, like I said, AMA states that the counties must enforce, identifies that a surety bond as an acceptable form of financial assurance for solar arrays deconstruction. Surety bond advantages. Unlike a letter of credit, a surety bond provides an option for the surety to provide A surety bond provides an option for the surety to perform or complete the decommissioning obligation in the event of a default rather than the county. A surety bond also provides an avenue for administering a claim or default if the asset owner is not responsive to an issue, which would be Summit Ridge Energy's LLC's certificate of insurance is also part of Exhibit L. And I have talked to our legal counsel about this. We've never not been granted this. So this is different for us. And it actually does create a hardship for us. So if we've ever had to create a letter of credit, it's always been for the road use agreement, which our EPC, which is our engineering procurement and construction, also helps on that front. Like if there's damage to the road when it's actually taking place. So we would actually prefer to do an escrow where we would put the money up front instead of doing a letter of credit. It would really create a hardship for us to do it. I know it sounds really silly, but it's just based on the way that the banking is done. We do like all A+ US grade. I'm happy to provide lots of information. Talked about this with Bureau County. They also got comfortable with it. They felt really strongly about the letter of credit. But when we explained that it actually protects the county better, like I was saying, and along with you're still getting the sum of money. I don't think it should hopefully change as long as the county is still getting the money. It's just funny that the ordinance specifically calls out something that it's supposed to be upholding the AMO, and the AMO actually says it could be a surety bond or letter of credit.
The AMA allows the county to decide the type of financial assurance. The AMA doesn't say it needs to be a surety bond. The state's attorney provided information to the ZBA that a letter of credit is a much more secure form of surety than a bond. A surety bond involves a third party, whereas a letter of credit is the county and the solar farm. If the solar farm is not doing the right thing, we simply present a request to the bank and we get our money. Now, you can very carefully draft a surety bond to try and make it as protective and as flexible as a letter of credit. The county has never drafted a surety bond, and I can't imagine how much time that would take. I'm sure the state's attorney would do it for us if you want, but the state's attorney has already said a letter of credit is better for the county than a surety bond.
Yeah, and the other issue that I have as an ELOC and as a former ZBA person is if we were going to, even if we decided we wanted to go in that direction, we would have to change our ordinance, and that takes time, more time than you probably want to wait for us to change that.
Does it really? It's just a variance. I don't think it requires you changing your ordinance.
You could approve the waiver, and then we would have to work with the state's attorney to develop a standard form for a surety bond.
And that's the time I'm worried about.
Well, that can happen after the county board approval, and the developer would have to cool their heels while we're going through that.
Right.
But we didn't have to do that for Bureau County, which is
That's Bureau County.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm happy to follow the advice and just wait, actually. If we want to pause and review this policy, I think, why not?
Wait on the whole case for the answer of the surety bond?
Yeah.
So do we want to make the state's attorney's office work on that?
I think it would be an opportunity to hold a town hall as well.
Okay. Well, that's...
I mean, my vote tonight would probably be no otherwise. So I think it's a two birds, one stone.
Okay.
If not a town hall, I mean, this county offers free mediation. That could be a process.
Okay. So you're not in favor of moving this to the board without the community engagement or without the letter of credit?
I'm saying that I see two process issues that I now have an issue with. I would have let the community thing go, but this thing, it seems, it's the second time that we've said, oh, we'll revisit it. Let's do it. Let's visit it and let's work it through the...
Yeah, I would be inclined to visit this offline of an active case. I agree that we need to visit this at some point because it's not going to be the last time it comes up. But
if it's not an interest for the rest of the board, I'm okay to let that suggestion go, but that would be my suggestion.
Okay, I don't know. I'd love some other input on this Part D part from people who maybe know more about finances than I.
You're looking right at me, so I'm just going to assume it's me. I don't actually know a lot about finances, but I know that I trust our legal advice that we receive from the state's attorney's office about what works best in Champaign County. I understand it worked differently in a different county, but we learn a little bit more every day that we are an island of misfit toys. We're very, very special. However it works out. The rules that have gotten us to where we are, if this is the advice that we're getting, that this is the way that works best for us. You mentioned escrow, though. So would your company be willing to just literally put all of
That's
that
our
money?
preference. We would much rather do that. I didn't, we talked about it a bit with our company, with our general counsel after, and they were saying, you know, just so you know more, it really does create more of a hardship than you realize. Like if we could do an escrow instead where the money would sit and it would accrue interest, that would be our preference. So I don't want to hold up your decision. I felt like I needed to share what our general counsel said. I had different information from what I had at the last CBA. So,
Mr. Hall, have we received any advice relative to an escrow on this issue? Because I know that was something that was proposed in a previous case when we discussed this similar issue once upon a time too.
Well, in fact, our wind farm standards require the letter of credit to be converted to an escrow account. And again, that's premised upon the state's attorney working with the developer to have an agreement about the escrow account. So we do allow escrow accounts for wind farms. We've never required that for solar farms because it was viewed as actually more expensive than a letter of credit. As far as I know, it actually is a more expensive thing than a letter of credit. So
the reason I ask about that is I just remember that it was a couple months ago when we were hearing about this, where we heard that there's literally only 3 banks locally. And this is a larger project, but that was on a smaller project where there's only 3 banks locally that have the credit rating sufficient to provide that letter. And so it starts to limit who can play, basically. But if you have the money for an escrow. So it's just something I would be interested in looking into if that is a different option. But as far as tonight, to the chair's question, I would be content to follow our attorney's advice and also deny Part D.
Well, I'm intrigued by the escrow, but I don't, this also would be a discussion. I'm going to look at John Farney now, like very sternly, because he knows about finance, and I want somebody's opinion other than a lawyer. And
yeah, so when this ordinance was written, Alan Nudo, Steve Beckett, it was during their time. They have forgotten more about finance than I will ever know, and they said that this is what we needed. And the fact that our state's attorney backs it up, I would say we don't want to go changing things. Those are 2 men that have been involved with numerous developments, large developments. And so there's a reason that we asked for the letter of credit. So I don't think we should do anything rushed on that.
yeah, what I think my question is a question that's no one really asked until this minute is we've not ever considered an escrow because we haven't had a petitioner that's walked up and said, take my money. So pardon us if we're slightly off our feet here. I don't know how long it would take to get an answer to that from people who know better than us, like the state's attorney's office. I'm not comfortable deciding, sure, we'll do the escrow and we'll change Part D to a letter of credit or escrow and drop the surety bond. I'm just not comfortable, and I don't know if anyone on the board wants to do that tonight. So I'm not sure with this little part how we would want to proceed. We can deny Part D and, let it stay the way it is. And you could come and tell us that, well, we'll do the escrow and we would have to have staff work with the state's attorney. We could do that after a vote, or we could wait to do the vote. We're already in trouble with state law on several levels.
Not yet, actually. I think, John, the 30 days starts after the ZBA. So within the ZBA's decision, you have 30 days. So I know that, I don't know, we don't have the county board yet, but we're still within 30 days right now.
Well, but by the 21st of the month, I'm without my calendar. I think the meeting is the 21st.
It's 2 weeks from tonight, so.
18th, okay. I think by the 18th, we are out of the 30-day time
By
limit.
like 4 days. That's our preference, is that the vote is tonight though, and that we could discuss the, we don't want this to hold up your decision. I just felt like I needed to represent new information from our attorney, and we can sort it out at a later time with the county board or whatever.
Yeah, that would be, I'm trying to think if that would be a thing that even be sorted out by the county board. They're going to get presented approval or denial, this part or all parts. And is that even a thing we could do by the county board?
Well, I'd want to check with the state's attorney, but in my mind, the developer requested a surety bond. If they want to change that request now to an escrow, my simple mind says, well, an escrow is better than a surety bond. So that's actually less of a request. They're not increasing their request. I believe they could change it. Obviously, the escrow account details do not have to be figured out by the time the county board votes. I believe the county board could vote on a request to provide an escrow account rather than a letter of credit. Again, I want to verify that with the state's attorney. So I think it's possible.
Jen?
We do have an assistant state's attorney here tonight, and obviously, as he is an assistant state's attorney, he could not fully tell us yes or no, but he could tell us if they've even researched escrow to this point as an option for us, perhaps, if we ask Mr. Mueller, or not.
And we do have an escrow account already for the wind farm. The wind farm is already.
So we have an existing account.
So we have
could
an
even be
existing
used.
escrow model.
So, and where is our assistant?
Mr. Andrew Mueller, could you come on forward for a
Hiding in the
minute?
back there?
I've seen you dodging my glances. Thank you. Just briefly, has there even been any looking into whether an escrow would be appropriate or feasible in issues like this?
In reference to solar farms, no. As John referenced, we have had them in wind farm situations, but they have not been examined in terms of this particular project.
Ballpark, you know that we have two weeks until the county board, and you know your caseload way more than anyone else. Is this something that we could look into and potentially have an answer on the feasibility of, or would that be
I would like
aggressive?
to be optimistic and say that's something that we'd be willing to examine and get talk with John and the board about our assessment of the situation. But
thank you.
Thank you very much for volunteering that. Emily, with that new information about that part of it, would you be comfortable if we considered the escrow account? I would be comfortable considering it if it's doable and the state's attorney says it's okay.
I mean, it doesn't have to be on consent, right? It doesn't have to be a unanimous vote for it to go forward.
Hey, we could
Be a full
say
thing.
no, it would still go to the board.
Mhm.
It's going to get forwarded with our decision. It goes forward regardless, and the final vote is at the county board. So you're good with that?
I'm just one member. Yeah.
Yeah, understood. All right, other questions for John or the petitioner? John?
I have a question for Ms. Cronin, if you don't mind. One of the things that was brought up in public comment that I'm interested to know from about Summit Ridge Energy is federal money. Is Summit Ridge receiving, whether it be a subsidy, some kind of financial guarantee, something from the federal government? Are you receiving that right now? Are you receiving that? Are you lined up for that in the future? Is there federal money coming to you to finance these projects?
So there's no like USDA grants. We have no grants for our projects, but all solar projects are eligible for the investment tax credit through the IRA. So we have underwritten that. As long as our project is built or starts construction, a certain percentage of it by a certain period, by a certain date, then we would still be eligible for that. And then you can get other incentives too if you use like domestic content, which a lot of our panels are built in the US. We have a very large partnership with Q-Cells, which is a Korean-based company that has built over 2 gigawatts of solar panels that we've committed to. And a vice president came to that grand opening too. So.
And you're actively right now receiving those credits on other
Yes,
projects?
for other projects. It's too early stage for us to get them yet. The project has to get approved. We have to get a building permit and all that good stuff. But as of now, yes. But even without that, we can still build our project. The model still supports it. It just hurts our margin.
Okay. And labor for this project, do you use local contractors? Do they come from out of the area? How does that work?
Yeah, so we've talked about labor a lot at the other ZBA meetings, but we do a bid. It's too early to start a bid yet, but we do a bid and we just get all different numbers. We have definitely worked with local labor before. It's just too early at this time to select it. But we always pay the heavyweight, which is the union wage, regardless of who we go with. So we pay the heaviest weight.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions for the petitioner or for John? Any discussion among ourselves? Is there any concern? I mean, we've heard from the public, we've heard from the petitioner. You've heard from the chair more than you want to, John?
Well, I know that this goes to the full board regardless of how the vote goes tonight, but I really have a problem with the idea that there's 637,500 acres of land in Champaign County, and developers look at adjacent to a subdivision for 36 acres. You can't find 36 acres out of that. It just doesn't make sense to me. As I went through the ELUC packet and reviewed all that, the only people that have supported this project from in their testimony and emails have been the developer, obviously, and one person from Urbana. People who are not going to have to look at this every day, who are not going to have their property value diminished by this project. I know I would not want to live within 300 feet of an industrial power plant, which is what this is. I don't care what Springfield says. Springfield is wrong on lots of things. We created a task force for the Mahomet Aquifer over carbon sequestration that Springfield went and did without asking anybody that lives over the Mahomet Aquifer. And they went and said, we're doing this. And then they had to go back and fix it. How long till we're going back and fixing solar and wind farms that the state is telling us, oh, you have to do it. We said this is good. Solar and wind farms are not getting placed near legislators' houses, near the governor's house. The governor flies over solar farms. He doesn't walk amongst them. He doesn't have to go out and walk his dog and see a solar farm in his backyard, or a wind farm with bright lights blinking all night long. I'm frustrated with this. This is, of all the things that face Champaign County and the different committees that I'm on, looking at the budget, I would rather do the budget than this. This is actually affecting people's lives. I'm tired of it. So I'm going to be a no on this, and I'm going to be a no next week. And I really hope that the county board listens to the people who are actually going to be affected by this. There's 637,500 acres in this county. Find 36 acres somewhere else. Thanks.
Aaron?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I'll echo a lot of what Mr. Farney just said. I share some of the worries that the people who've spoken here tonight shared. I don't share all of their worries, but I share some of them about what happens with solar in the future, and once it's put in there, what becomes of it in the future. like Mr. Farney said, though, my biggest issue, and why I'll be a no, is the state saying you will do this. It was bad this committee's heard me say it before. It was bad legislation when it was passed. It's still bad legislation, and it needs to be changed. At our budget hearings, it was mentioned the idea of having a committee or something that goes and to Springfield and puts forward positions that the county would like to see and such like that. Well, this would be something to me that would really need to be pushing for us to change it and put the hands of the zoning back in the counties. The idea that Springfield knows what's best for the counties is bullcrap. It's not right. Our assistant state's attorney sitting in the audience probably doesn't like hear it, but if it puts us into a lawsuit, no, I don't want a lawsuit, but ultimately maybe that's what it would take for some people to wake up and see that the Springfield does not always do what's best for the state. The idea that we're going to go green energy by, was it 2050, 100%. I don't know if that's truly attainable or not, but our energy demands as a whole are going up every year. So that just means every year until we get to it, we're going to have to keep building more and more solar and or wind and or I don't know. So yeah, like Mr. Farney said, it's frustrating, it's irritating, and again, I'll be a no tonight. Thanks.
Mala?
I just want to thank everyone for coming out and for all the emails we received. I won't repeat what JJ or Aaron said, but I'm also a no tonight. When I was going through the emails, we received an email from Mr. and Mrs. Bunch, and she showed us her, I'm assuming your backyard or front yard. Okay. And I live on the outside of Urbana, and there's a field behind my house, and I also wouldn't want a solar panel behind my house. And so I'm also a no.
Did you have something you wanted to add, John?
Well, I just wanted to make clear that Ms. Bunch showed a photo, but it's without the screening that we require. So this is not what they will see. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you knew that. Okay.
To harp on the past just one more time, I listened to lots and lots of cases as ZBA chair, and I learned a couple of things. And this is not to disparage anyone. This is not to say, that I have a bias any one way or the other. I agree. There's probably a lot of places to site a solar farm. It's not like wind where you have to find a particular spot. One thing that was said in one ZBA meeting a long time ago was if you like the view that you have out your backyard of this field and the mountains and the trees, you have to remember a couple of things. You don't own it. You don't own the view. That view probably belongs to someone else, and they have property rights to do what they want also. Another thing that I heard regarding that was if you like the view that much, well, then buy it. And then you can decide what happens on it. If we put the shoe on the other foot, and I really appreciate John and Aaron's views on this, but if we had something that was maybe more favorable to business or more favorable to, let's say, a developer who wanted to do houses there or something, I would hear from some contingent of the political spectrum that it's my property and it's my right to do what I want to do on it. And this property belongs to someone who's decided this is what they want to do on it, and they're working with the developer to do it. Is it the best possible spot for a solar farm? Maybe not. Is it the worst? Not at all. It doesn't only meet the state standards, which we don't meet here in the county. Ours were more strict. It meets ours as well. It's an allowed thing. The waivers that we would waive are not in any way different than almost any other project of any kind. It's the distance from residences. It has the screening it's supposed to have. It has the sound requirements. We make inverters be in the middle of a solar farm for a reason, because it's the furthest away from people. We have done ones where we make them put the inverters up against some other noisy thing as far away from people as possible. We work very hard to let the people who own the land, who want to do something, and the people who live around that land all cohabitate as best as possible. Everyone who lives at the end of the street on a cul-de-sac always wants to be the last one on the end of that street. And there was a point where you put your house up in front of somebody else's end of the road, and they probably weren't happy about it either. I'm going to vote yes to move it to the county board because I want the whole board to hear it. And I want everyone who came tonight to go to the county board to speak about it. And I want John and Aaron and everyone else on the board who wants to talk about it in the full forum of the full county board, because we represent the whole county. And I appreciate everyone that's come here tonight. I'm a hard no on Part D. I'm a yes on the other parts. And that's, if I'm the only yes, it's just so that it's not unanimous. And I hope to see everyone in 2 weeks. Emily?
Everyone has their own lens, I think, that they're bringing to this vote. I've just never heard a developer outright say in public that they did not do something to skirt public input. Like, I've been on the board for almost 6 years. I've just never heard that. That is the lens that I'm bringing. There's a reason why it takes a vote from neighbors to approve this. I don't need to harp on it anymore, but that's why I'm voting no.
All right. Any other questions for the petitioner? Any other questions for John? Any other conversation among the board? All right. Do we want to do a roll call? Okay. John?
Could we be clear on what the motion is?
Yes. Can the chair make the motion? Oh, we have a motion, that's right, but we want to make sure that this motion reflects that we are not supporting Part D, one way or another. So we have to, Mala, you're the lawyer. I've dumped enough on Jennifer. I'm going to make you do this. Microphone?
I guess I thought we were voting on 7A parts A through D. Right? 8 of what?
8A through D.
Oh.
Yeah,
So
yes,
A
8.
through
Sorry.
D.
Yes.
So
That's what I understand the motion on the floor is, the whole thing. Do we
the-
need to amend the motion to pull off Part D?
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going with this. So
It was my motion, so I would actually like to revise my motion to approve 8A, B, C, and D, and deny Part D. Yep, so A, B, C, I cannot speak, I'm sorry. 8A, B, and C, approve, deny Part D.
okay, and
That doesn't make sense, because then if you're voting no on it, you're voting no on everything.
So what if we modify the motion to say that we're voting on A, B, and C, and D has been stricken?
Yeah.
Now, does that work? Hang on. That means they don't have to do anything, escrow or otherwise, right?
I think the petitioner has a right for their request to go to the county board.
Okay, so we want to change that to letter of credit or escrow and then go ahead and move it forward.
If I might, this is going to go to the county board, all 4 parts of it, no matter what. So we should probably just vote on it once, the entire package. Even if it fails at committee, it still goes to the full board. And at the full board, we can address the individual parts. We're
Makes
in a
sense.
unique situation since this has got to go to the board either way.
Yeah.
That's where this is confusing a bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way we can move this and let that escrow conversation happen at the board, and maybe it just has to happen by being brought up at the board. Jen?
If it's moving to the full board no matter what, then yeah, let's just vote on it as is here, because it's just a vote here. And then at the full board, you know, all the amendments can be whatever, you know, we can, any discussion that's appropriate at the full board would be the right place for it. I think you're right.
All right, is the board happy with that before we take the vote? So the motion as originally proposed stands, and we're ready to call the roll.
Rodriguez,
No.
Esri,
No.
Rogers,
No.
Barney,
No.
Locke,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. All right, folks, there you have it. This will be at the full board in 2 weeks, and I've said it enough. I appreciate all of your input tonight. I appreciate doing it in the time allowed. You all did a wonderful job. Take a couple of throat lozenges and be ready to come to the county board meeting in 2 weeks, and I hope to see you all there. Thank you very much for coming tonight. If you want to stay for the rest of it, feel free. If you're going to head out, try to head out quiet so that we can continue on with the meeting. Thank you again very much. Drive safe. All right, Part B, decommissioning and site reclamation plan for zoning case 162S25A, a request by Mahomet Illinois Solar 1 LLC, care of Summit Ridge Energy LLC via agent Maria Crone, Senior Manager, Project Development, and participating landowners, Paul Nurmi, trustee, and Greater Heritage Farms LLC to authorize a decommissioning and reclamation plan for a community PV solar farm with a total nameplate capacity of 4.99 megawatts and totaling approximately 36 acres in the Ag 2 zoning district on the south side of US Highway 50 in the west half of the northeast quarter and the east half of the northwest quarter of Section 17, Township 20 North, Range 7 east of the 3rd Principal Meridian in Mahomet Township, commonly known as farmland owned by Greater Heritage Farms LLC and Paul Nurmi, trustee. I'd first entertain a motion. Motion by Locke, and a second. Second by Rodriguez. All right, discussion. Or John, do you want to add some input?
I would just say, you know, reviewing these, and I've said this before, reviewing these DSRPs is a challenge for our office. This is within the range of what other DSRPs have been. And so as far as staff is concerned, we don't see any problems with this DSRP. It is probably the most different estimate that we've seen. They have every developer consultant has a different way of putting their DSRP together. This is the most different, but in terms of the prices, it falls in the range that we've seen for other projects.
Questions for John or the developer? Ma?
Can you elaborate on what you mean by different?
Yeah, let me get to that. Just in the way that they've sort of combined the costs for decommissioning and the salvage values all in one sheet. And so we really can't compare this on a line item by line item basis. What we do is we figure up what the total cost is per megawatt and per acre and compare it to other total costs. That's the only way we can compare it. And again, it's within the range of what other solar farms have been. And I don't want to make it sound like, well, everybody else does it this way. These folks did it a different way. No, they each do it a different way. There is no standard. Some people actually follow RS means, which is the most standard way, but we don't require it to be done that way. And in terms of the overall costs, this is similar to other solar farms.
Other questions for John or for the developer? Hearing none. Voice vote okay for this one? This just moves it to the board. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, I think the motion moves to the board with a denial. Moving on to zoning case. Item C, zoning case 130 AT 24, amend the Champaign County zoning ordinance to add battery energy storage system as a new principal use and indicate that a battery energy storage system may be authorized by a county board special use permit in the Ag 1 Agriculture, Ag 2 Agriculture, B1 Rural Trade Center, Rural Trade Center, B4 General Business, I1 Light Industry, and I2 Heavy Industry zoning districts. Add requirements and fees for battery energy storage systems, add any required definitions, and make certain other revisions to the ordinance as detailed in the full legal advertisement. First, I'd entertain a motion. Moved by Locke, and a second. Second by Rogers. Discussion. John?
Okay, this has changed so much since the committee originally approved it to go to the public hearing. That was back in February of 2024. We've done a lot of work on this. When the committee reviewed it previously, it was proposed to be just a special use permit. The more we got into NFPA 855 and the risks inherent in battery storage, we recommended that it should be a county board special use permit. ZBA accepted that. We've added access drive requirements to make sure every point in the battery energy storage system is within 100 feet of an access drive. That's for emergency access, obviously. When it was originally here, we had written our own safety requirements because we hadn't spent weeks reading NFPA 855. And you really need to spend weeks reading NFPA 855. And so all of the safety requirements are taken directly from NFPA 855. That's so future zoning administrators don't have to spend weeks reading NFPA 855. It's all going to be in the ordinance. And that is the most important thing, is that it meets NFPA 855. That's the current NFPA 855, because in a few months, there'll be a new NFPA 855 that may be different or maybe not. We'll wait and see and report to you on that. The biggest thing is the ZBA, the documents of record were included in the memo. The ZBA reviewed a study of, I'm forgetting the term right now, the way they study the way the smoke and the pollution from our thermal runaway event travels through the air plume modeling. We found one report of an air plume modeling. Now, this is using a computer and using assumed parameters. They documented all their parameters, and that study found that in a low wind situation in the US, a big fire at a BESS event is a good thing because it carries, the force of the fire carries the pollutants up and they get dispersed. A small thermal runaway event that sits there and smolders when there's no wind just lets everything hang on the ground. And you can have severe air quality impacts within 900 feet in that study. Now, it may be that the new NFPA 855 will require air plume monitoring, but anytime you have to get people to agree on the standards to use in a computer model is not a good thing, because people can disagree, much like they can disagree regarding aquifers. But anyhow, that was the basis for the ZBA thinking. And when we had one other study also that recommended a 1/4 mile separation if there's any uncertainty. So the ZBA changed the separation to nearby principal buildings to a 1/4 mile, which is extreme. No one else has required that we know of. But we did the research and that's what we came up with. The other thing, because of that, the ZBA didn't want to see a rural residential overlay development within a 1/4 mile of a BES. Why would you authorize more people to be within that 1/4 mile separation in future development? They didn't have an issue with what we call by right development, the 3 or 4 lots that a landowner can create by right. That's their right. This doesn't change that, but do not propose a rural residential subdivision within a 1/4 mile of a BES. This was reviewed by 3 different BES developers. One of them is here tonight. And after going through all that, when Charlie and I were working on this memo, and I apologize for this, we realized we were so tuned into NFP 855, which basically has 100 feet separation to buildable property lines, we forgot to write that into the ordinance. So at your desk tonight is a 1-page handout proposing 3 new paragraphs added to section 618C, and 618C is, I believe, on page 149. 618C is minimum standard conditions for separations for a tier 2 BES from adjacent uses and structures. We're recommending this be added. Number 5, the minimum side and rear yard for tier 2 BES equipment other than fencing and inverters is 100 feet. That's what NFPA 855 incorporates. Paragraph 6, electrical inverters for tier 2 BES shall be located as far as possible from property lines other than railroad property lines and electrical substation property lines, and consistent with good engineering practice. Inverter locations that are less than 275 feet from the perimeter fence shall require specific approval and may require special sound deadening, construction, and noise analysis. That language is nearly identical to what we require for solar farms. It's based on the sound created by the inverters, and we want it to be that far inside the property line. Paragraph 7, tier 2 BES fencing shall be no less than 26 feet from the property line of any adjacent lot other than lots for railroad property and electrical substation property. That is identical to what is required for solar farms, with the exception that we're now aware of railroad properties and electrical substation properties. So we would recommend these changes. If you want, you could refer this whole case back to the ZBA to deal with these changes, or you could include them, or you could not include them. It's up to you.
Has the ZBA talked about this in regard to the front? You know, to the parts you didn't forget to put in? And I'm not saying you forgot, the parts that weren't addressed during the public hearing. In your impression of the rest of this, I get the impression that they would be comfortable with these changes.
I have the same impression.
So, but this is not got any kind of timeline. It could go back to when would be the next ZBA meeting it would fit into for this change. It wouldn't take long, I assume.
It wouldn't take long. I think we could fit it in perhaps October. Now, one word of caution. This is one of those years where we only have one ZBA meeting in November and December each. So if we, that could slow it down, but it would only, I don't think it would take long at any meeting, frankly.
Do we have any imminent BESS that we need an ordinance to cover?
We have no pending applications. The one best that you approved already meets and exceeds all of these standards.
Right. NFPA 855. If you say it one more time, it becomes a drinking game.
I dream about it at night, so
I'm very sorry.
I am too. No, we don't have any pending application, but to be fair, we do have a developer who has been following us closely from the beginning. They have a site, they're looking at the site. I believe these changes may throw some curveballs at that developer, but again, I'm recommending this based on my best judgment of what this should be for our county.
I'm inclined to let the ZBA incorporate these changes so that there's a moment for the full public input and there's a moment for them to deliberate on that. Since we don't have an imminent case, and that kind of does all the I's and T's in proper form.
Okay.
And it won't take long for us once it's back here because we really don't have a whole lot to discuss about. It's been talked about a lot already. So if you could get that on the next ZBA, is the board comfortable with moving this? You want to make a motion to that effect?
Well, I'd be willing to, but I don't really have a problem moving it either way, but letting the ZBA handle it, to truly let it go through the correct process. So I too would say that the ZBA wouldn't, but most likely will not have an issue with this. I don't believe we've had any issues from any of the municipalities, have we, period, and if we have, or would you suspect that, this addition would have any issues with the municipalities?
No, I mean, my view is, and this is not debatable, this adds more protections into this ordinance. I don't know how municipalities will respond to this. They've been very silent so far. And we had no comments from the public other than the 3 developers. So, anyhow.
Yeah. Okay. I wouldn't have so if we need a motion, I guess I would it be a motion to amend or just a motion separate motion to pass this, however that needs to be worded, to pass it back to ZBA to
remand back to ZBA for consideration.
I'd move to remand this back to ZBA for consideration of this addition as presented to us tonight, to be done obviously at Mr. Hall, since he knows that they're scheduling, but ideally at the earliest available that they believe it's doable.
All right, thank you. Have a motion and a second? Second by John. He beat you, Jen. Sorry. Any more discussion on this before we vote?
Just quick, I will say thank you to ZBA and Mr. Hall and the planning and zoning staff, Charlie, who's here tonight, who've worked on this ordinance thus far. Hopefully it doesn't turn into something in half a year or something that the state comes in and says, here's the new ordinance and yours is out of date.
Well, to that point, we missed that bullet this past session. The state did have standards which were just not, I can't believe how low the standards were. And as we've learned, things that die in one session usually come back in the next session. So this may all be for naught, but I think it's important that the county go on record with what they think is a good ordinance.
All right, thanks, John. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right. Congratulations, ZBA. All right, with that, we finished all the voting. We have no monthly reports in other business this month. I don't have a chair's report. We have no items to be placed on the consent agenda. And I would call this meeting adjourned at, according to my coat hanger clock, at 8:32. Thank you all again for coming, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.